Welcome to Big Blend Radio's California Employment Law Podcast featuring San Diego attorney Ward Heinrichs. Okay, everybody. So a lot is going on in the law world, the legal world, the employment world, excuse me, for sure. And of course, you know, it is the fourth Wednesday. So Ward Heinrichs is back. Ward is a San Diego employment attorney, and he always keeps us up to date with what's going on. And boy, I don't know, we might have to be weekly or daily, Ward, with everything that's going on in the world federally. But I know some of that, touches state. And then I don't know, man, but a lot's going on. And today we're going to get into DEI. And who even knew about DEI until all of this happened? I think people did, but didn't. You know what I mean? And so I think we should have some understanding. You've got a great article explaining some of the history about that and talk about what's happening now, because I think that everything that is going on with the Trump administration, some of it is affecting now, some of it isn't. There's, what's going on with executive orders versus the Supreme Court. So it's confusing for all of us, especially for reading headlines, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a complex issue, and I do think businesses have things to be concerned about with DEI programs that they didn't before. So, yeah, well, I want to get into that and give a cautionary tale possibly.
Okay, so DEI, what is DEI? Let's get that part straight. What is it?
Well, it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And like I said in my article, that really was spawned by affirmative action in the past. And there was a pretty recent Supreme Court case that said, well, you really can't do affirmative action. You can't consider race in admissions for colleges. And that was a pretty famous case that happened 2 years ago. Students for fair, what was it, fair something, but fair inclusion in admissions. And who really brought that were a group of Asian students who were applying to Harvard and North Carolina. And they said, hey, look, we should be able to get in here. We meet all the right criteria. We've done very well. And the Supreme Court said, well, we're going to change our policy, because back in the 1970s, they said, well, you could consider race as a factor amongst many other factors. And that was deemed affirmative action. And the term had been around a while before that, but that was saying, yeah, some affirmative action is okay. But then the recent case, the one against Harvard and North Carolina, said that, no, you can't consider race at all. It's not fair. It's against the 14th Amendment. And so that's a big change. And then Trump, with his recent executive orders, has taken that a little bit further, because what spawned from that Supreme Court case, or about the time we started hearing the term diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the idea is, well, we really don't want quotas. We really want to be fair to everyone. But part of being fair to everyone is making opportunities available to everyone. So the emphasis was different, but many people, maybe half the country, still think that, well, diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that may not pass muster under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So that's why we're here where we are. And
Okay.
Trump's orders are saying, hey, DEI, I'm not sure if he's saying all DEI is illegal. I personally, I would read it as not saying that everything that's called DEI is illegal, but I would think that he's saying that there's many DEI programs that are still quota driven, not protected by the by the 14th Amendment.
Okay, but so it also started to go into from race into, it's discrimination, right? If you don't hire the right, not just, college, but hiring. I know, as soon as I should just shut up. I should just shut up, Ward. I'll just mute myself for this whole segment. But, Nancy will love that. But when you look at this, it's also inclusivity of gender, right? And I think that's part of it. He's been very strong on that too, right? So it's that. But so the quota thing, I get all that, because you also don't want to hire someone just because of this, right? Or, admit them into a college just because of reaching a quota. So that's unfair even to the individual. You know what I mean?
That was found
You're being looked,
unfair back in the 70s
you're being looked
under the
at as a,
Bakke case.
like we're
They
doing the
said that's
token.
not good.
Yeah.
Uh, and they allowed Bakke, that Bakke won the case. So he was able to get admitted into med school in California. So, but they said that, and it was saying that affirmative action is okay to at least a degree. It's saying that, well, if you consider race as one factor amongst many, then that's okay.
Mm.
And so that's the difference now, though. In the recent case at Harvard, North Carolina, University of North Carolina, they said no, that's not even okay. You can't consider it as a factor.
Okay. So, because no one should be a token in a quota, right? And should be respected for who they are. But these programs came in when people were of color and of different gender, identities were getting overlooked because of that, right?
Well, be careful
So
about the
this is
gender
what
identity one, because the
I'm not
Supreme
going to say it
Court
right
hasn't
either. Like,
come out, and part of this is
okay.
court cases. So the Supreme Court hasn't come out and said that gender identity is a protected class under the 14th Amendment. So it's certainly gender has protection under the Equal Protection Clause in the
But gender
14th Amendment.
identity is
But
different.
then, yeah, and maybe it's getting there,
Okay.
because there've been cases that have touched on it, but it hasn't come out and said that that's one of the things that is that the 14th Amendment will protect.
I think I should be wearing caution tape today.
It's a really thorny little issue, and it's been
Mm.
developing slowly over time. And so it's really easy to misunderstand the law
And everybody
area.
right now, no matter what side everyone's on, is hot and bothered, right? Or just, everybody's
Yeah. Oh,
arguing and everybody's like,
absolutely.
this, it's things are moving so fast. It is like the sledgehammer, it is like boom, 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 boom. And people are going, wait, I didn't even understand this yet. And just kind of, it's an emotional reactivity to it. And it sounds like
Absolutely.
DEI, though, when you hear about, oh, we're just going to, it sounds like, boom, we're getting rid of it. And that's that. And so diversity doesn't matter. That's the emotional reaction. I'm just generalizing, everybody. Don't attack me. I am not the professional on this, but I do believe that there should be fair inclusion, no matter, it shouldn't matter about your race, gender, or gender identity to be able to get a job that you are qualified for, or be able to go to college that you're qualified for if you match up. And so I think what a lot of people are worried about is with these programs and what's happening is that, okay, if we are all back in the same pot together, which sounds good, right? Then they're going to there's no law to help someone who's being discriminated against, right? Or not being, I will use
I gotta
that's
say
the
that's not true.
wrong D word, right? But people are
Yeah,
going to,
there
yeah.
certainly are laws that are constitutional that say you can't discriminate, and that's the whole thing that's going on here. As I said, it was a group of Asian students who said, we're being discriminated against. This policy is preventing us because we are the most qualified, or we are qualified enough to go to the school. And I'm not trying to call out Asian students by any means. I'm just saying that's really what happened.
That's a
And
history.
the Supreme Court said, you're right. You should be going to these schools, and that at least you should have the opportunity and shouldn't be excluded. Uh, is it a quota? Is it a factor? It was at least a factor. And they said you can't use race as a factor. And quite frankly, I have to agree with that decision, because it's saying you can't discriminate against anyone.
Mm. You
Now,
should.
the problem is, I think what the opposite argument is, you're going to see discrimination if you don't do these things.
Mm-hmm.
But you can argue, well, it's a discriminatory policy that is enforcing these things. So it's like, whoa,
I'm glad I'm not a judge.
it's kind of
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Mm.
And so no, discrimination is still illegal and not allowed in the United
Okay.
States.
Okay. So everyone understand that. So no matter what goes on, you have that as your weapon to for protection. You have that as a tool in.
Sides, again, I don't want to pit people against each other. I don't think that's quite right, but the one side that seems to be more represented by some people who have Asian ancestry are saying you were discriminating against me, and the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause does not allow that.
Hmm.
And so it's still
So
there. And the Supreme Court said, you're right. You were
hmm.
discriminated against.
Okay. So now what's going on with Trump and the Supreme? See, this is what's interesting. Okay, so let's get into this part of it. Let's go back to civics class. And I did not take a civics class in this country. I didn't grow up here. So please don't yell at me, but I'm always, you've got to learn. Wherever you are, you should learn what's going on. And that's, this learning part here. So Trump says, boom, we want to get rid of this DEI, but there's like versions of this, right? And the headlines are all different. People are posting stuff on social media and making memes and charts and who's what is accurate. So I always think with anything that's going on, the first thing to do is the facts, no matter what it is. I don't care if whatever it is in life, when there's something dramatic or an issue or an argument, get the facts first. Don't without the emotional reaction. Am I good at that? No, because I've got a salty mouth. So, but if you can do that, get the facts, isolate them, look at them, and then make decisions, on that. So Trump has got all these. It's just hard to see what is right and like what is accurate of what he said, unless you were actually listening to him. All right, and then there's the opinionated versions that go out in media and on social media, and then it's an executive order. So if he says, oh, it's an executive order and everything goes magically in place for what he says and does, that would make him like a dictator, basically, because he could just executive order everything, right? So the justice is there. The Supreme Court is there to go, let's see with what you want that it falls in line, right? Am I getting this right here?
Yeah, but I think that executive orders have been challenged before from both sides
That's
of
why
the aisle.
they're supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah, and it's fair. And so the executive order was challenged. There were a couple actually that Trump, at least in the recent case where contractors and grant recipients were in line to receive some compensation, but in order to get it, Trump's saying, "Hey, you got to look at your DEI programs," and then the court in Maryland said, "Well, your order is not specific enough, and I also think it violates the First Amendment because it's blocking free speech, at least to some degree."
Oh,
And I'm saying you can't execute on that, at least parts of the order, not all the order.
see,
Some
okay,
of the
so
order
that
is still
okay.
there. Um, and so, yeah, that's a good check. I agree with that type of analysis. We'll see where it goes because I
Mm.
assume it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say about it.
So that's the level of what goes. So the judge checks it out, goes in, then it goes to the Supreme Court,
Well,
and
it
then
goes to a
from
court of appeal probably first. There
okay.
are ways around that, skipping a step, but usually it'll go to the court of appeal and then the Supreme Court.
So I'm going to start calling you Professor Ward.
Okay,
Putting us in school.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, okay. Now so it goes, and then here comes, goes to court. Here now that's where, yeah, because I think it was such a blanketed statement that it's really difficult for individuals to understand what they mean, and so when it comes to the businesses, that's what we should look at is, so this is already creating a stir, which means workplaces are already stirring up, right? Employees are starting to wonder, bosses are starting to wonder, and
Absolutely, and they should be. They should be.
okay, everyone should wonder and start to figure things out. In California, because that's where you practice law, so this kind of thing can trickle down to state, right? Can the state block what Trump wants if it's federal or not?
Um, Very tough. It depends on the situation. If it's a state law that now we're talking about an executive order, so it's different than a law passed by Congress. So Congress
Okay.
can pass a law that the states can't go against. Now, in employment law, there's a little twist to that. Congress has passed laws, and so it's the supreme law in the land, but it's also said, well, if the states will protect this more than we do, that's okay. So there's a lot of laws, employment laws in California, where the California says, well, we want to protect our employees more, so we're going to do these laws and protect them more than the federal law would. And that's okay in many instances, like wage and hours and one, overtime and stuff. California laws allow way more overtime than federal law does. And the Supreme Court's okay with that because Congress said they're allowed to do it.
Whew. Okay.
I know it's kind of, we're I was going to say in the weeds. We're not in the weeds. This is mainstream stuff, but it's not simple.
Mm. So businesses right now should start looking at what their policy is, or if they even have one.
Even in California, yes. We talked before we went on air about Rob Bonta saying, "Hey, DEI," basically putting in a plug for DEI. But I have to say, you got to be careful. And the way he wrote it, I would say, doesn't really cover the risk very well for businesses.
Okay, so what is the risk for businesses? What should they be aware of in California, San Diego, well, all of California?
Because there are civil rights laws that say you can't discriminate. There and the 14th Amendment, individual employees certainly could sue over DEI. They can say, this DEI program here prevented me from having a fair chance.
Ooh.
And so of getting this job or, whatever.
Promotion or anything like that, right?
Promotion. And so that is discriminatory. And court, you need to overturn it and fine for me. Well, maybe not overturn the law, but overturn the DEI program. Yeah, that's probably a better way to think of it.
Okay, what about if you're fired? Because that's the other kind of thing I've heard, and I'm not going to get this right, but the rumor, kind of the conversation is a lot of the federal workers that were let off, just it was over through DEI issues, and so I don't know how true or what, but I've seen so much out there about it, so I don't know how to put it correctly in legal terms. So, but there's this, I don't know if they were just there's something about that, and I wonder about, people are getting fired. We don't want to talk about federal firing because that's a little bit different than what you're doing, but if people are fired now, the employer better really look at how they're firing and why, right? And kind of be smart about it so it doesn't land in a DEI hotbed.
I don't think that's changed, honestly.
Okay.
Because well, all right. So it could matter to this degree. Well, first, I said that you can get sued for DEI policies where someone says this discriminated against me, the DEI policy, and also attorney generals can do investigations. They're not prevented from saying, "Hey, I think you've got a problem with your DEI, and so we'll investigate this." And even the attorney general, federal attorney general, who has been prevented from doing a few things by the court order, still wouldn't be prevented from saying, I think there are separate civil rights violations going on because of this DEI. So that even the the attorney general could still do investigations and file lawsuits against DEI. It hasn't stopped that kind of thing. That would, again, be a separate analysis. And I know this gets complicated because they're not using the order that President Trump signed. They're using the civil rights law and saying, hey, We think DEI, that your DEI
Okay.
is violating the civil rights laws.
Ooh. Ooh, man, this
And
is
so, but you
messy.
did touch on termination, so I think that really hasn't changed. If the termination can be proved to be based on some type of discrimination, of course.
Mm.
But you may see um, more people who haven't been targeted. Well, gosh, boy, I got to be so careful how I say this.
I know.
You may see people who haven't traditionally filed claims, lawsuits based on DEI doing so now.
Oh, before it's gone.
Well, it doesn't matter. You may see people who haven't traditionally filed lawsuits based
Mhm.
on
Okay.
discrimination. Let's just use that term, um, because they're saying your DEI is discriminating against me, and I may not be the traditional person that you've seen bring these
Oh,
cases.
I see what you mean.
I
Yeah,
am.
because it's like going on dual sides now. This is like a
Yes.
crazy.
Well, it
This is
always
crazy.
has. I mean, the problem is it always has. But I think maybe the orders have given more fuel for the fire of old white
Yeah.
guys. I'm just going to say it, old white guys filing lawsuits because they've been discriminated against. Let's say that. Because I'm an old white guy, I can say that.
All right. Well done. 10 points. Well, but and that's the thing, right? So
Just say that's not. I mean, if there's really discrimination,
that
why
no, no.
not?
Yeah, it's a oh
And
wow.
it's crazy. It's really a sensitive, crazy subject.
Yeah, because to me, I'm for equality. Like I believe if you're qualified for that job, I don't care gender, race, I don't care. I don't care any of that. If you're qualified, you're qualified, right? And I don't think I just do not believe in discrimination on someone. If they're elder and they're really good at it, let them do it.
Right. That's
It's-
that seems to be right. That's the right policy, right?
yeah. So
Right?
D so okay, so people think that DEI is like if the challenge on DEI is being challenged. So it's almost like you're challenging the discrimination law that's already in place. So now if the
DEI, no, hold on. DEI is a company policy.
you're right, but if
DEI
that
is not a law.
no, but if that is threatened, so people are feeling that discrimination, that law
It's
is
happening
being threatened.
because of DEI.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The discrimination is because of the DEI.
Okay.
And we may see more of those lawsuits. But we're also I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe there won't be many lawsuits filed.
Well, it's a
Maybe there
good
won't be
good
that many investigations. Who knows?
good thing we're recording this right before it airs because because it could change by the time in 48 hours it could be
Yeah,
changed.
calling me up and say,
So
we got to redo that.
yeah, yeah, get that article back off the plate. Yeah, but yeah, it's wild. This is kind of like one of those years. It's going to be so much change. I wonder about minimum wage and all of that kind of stuff if that's going to be affected in some ways.
Think so because minimum wage is mostly a state issue.
Mhm.
Now, federal law does have a federal minimum wage,
Right.
but it's really low. And we've talked about it before. From my recollection, back when we were talking specifically about minimum wage years
Mm.
ago, I think only Wyoming actually used the federal minimum wage, and that
Wow.
every other state had a minimum wage that was greater. And that's why I kind of went into states are allowed to do that. The federal is just the floor there in protection of employees, but the states can go beyond to protect employees.
Mm.
So they can have greater minimum wage. So I don't think that's going to be affected because that's a state thing. Now, could political movements arise because of this and say, hey, minimum wage is too big? I guess.
Right.
I don't think
Hmm.
it's related to DEI though.
Okay. Okay. So what about unions and things like that? Or do you think they're threatened right now?
Yeah, but not for minimum wage and any of that kind of stuff that they often argue um, for DEI programs.
So
Now,
yeah.
unions could be sued too for having DEI.
Wow.
Sure.
Well, this is fun, isn't it?
So that would be one possible thing.
Oh,
And I really don't know enough about union
Yeah, you
DEI
work. It,
policies to get too
yeah,
much into that. Um, eh, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know enough about that.
yeah.
But
So
they could
this
be
is really
they could be affected like anyone else.
so right now. It's a good time for all businesses to take a look at their policy if they have one, and if they don't have one, should they have one?
You ask tough questions. Should they have a DEI policy? It's not required. Um, and certainly at the very least, they should have policies that say, at least in California for sure, that they say we don't discriminate because
Okay,
of race, color, gender, all that stuff. Um, should they have a specific DEI policy that promotes in some way a,
inclusivity.
a,
Yeah.
a different group? No.
Oh.
I think you got to be
Okay.
super
So
careful
at
about
this,
that.
I
And
think
so
to me,
honestly, I would say, well, let me if a new client comes to me and says, "Hey, I don't have a DEI policy. Do I need one?" I would say, maybe, and let's carefully construct it if you want it.
okay, and look at the
I
type
might
of
also say, well,
business too.
maybe you're at less risk because you don't have one.
Hmm.
But if you want one, we got to construct it
Oh
intelligently.
boy, this is crazy stuff, isn't it? Because when you think about that, oh, this is going to be so interesting to watch, you know.
It is. It is. We're all in no man's land. We're looking under our crystal balls, and they're cloudy.
Well, I hope, the old white men don't do stupid stuff like you're talking about and
I'm
hurt
not doing
business.
anything stupid.
No, no, you're not. You're not. You're the professor today, but you can be a judge if you
Oh
want,
boy.
but
Ask my
we
kids
could.
if I do anything stupid.
Oh, well, don't ask Nancy about me. My gosh. But I think, it's interesting because it is kind of like going back to civics class and understanding how our system
I think
works.
that's
And I
important, and that's why in the article I did the history because I think
yeah,
it's really enlightening to understand that.
I do think though that right now companies and does this affect companies by certain number of employees? Like if someone's starting a business or has a business, they should go to an employment attorney and go. And this shout out for Ward, man. He works all of California. I know you're based in San Diego, but he's got an RV and he'll go anywhere. So, but anyway, no, but you just have to have a park. But with this, get an employment attorney to have a look at your business, the number of employees, what your employee profile is, maybe. They like have your demographics as they want in marketing,
Yeah, no, that could be very important, certainly.
right?
Uh, oh gosh, but it's so much more complicated, I think, now because um, the idea behind DEI, at least often, is we need to be more fair to people of color. I mean, that's here they kind of conjoin. I'm not going to say it's always conjoined, but that seems to be
Mm.
part of what's there. And then I would say, well, I get that, and you need to be, but if you have a program that is discriminatory against old white men, you got to be careful. I think more careful about that now than you were
Wow.
a month ago.
Okay. And so HR has to be really aware of this too. And maybe, yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, all right. Um, if you have a DEI program, you really ought to look at it. If you don't, you ought to ask some questions about your
whether or
policies
not.
in
Yeah.
general.
Mm.
Um, and you need to be definitely non-discriminatory against everyone.
Anyway. Okay.
Everyone.
Everyone. Yeah. And so does this go by a number of employees that you should really start looking at having one or not having one type
No,
of
I don't think
business?
so. I mean, as a practical matter, I think small employers don't have DEI programs.
Right.
Large employers will tend to, so they'll be more affected by what I would call a movement, not necessarily by the orders, the executive orders. They really apply well to the federal government for sure, and then like contractors to the federal government, people who receive money from the federal government. Now the federal government has a say about what you do if you accept
Mm-hmm.
that benefit. Um, but again, the other problems that we raised was, lawsuits by individuals based
Right.
on DEI or any other policy, that everyone's vulnerable to.
Mm.
And so I just think you might need to take a more broad approach to how you administer your discrimination policies. Maybe that's the simplest way to think of it.
Mm. Now, what about the Fast Food Act? That fast food
Oh, the
in
fast food.
California. Yeah, I'm going back to, we always close with food. Come on. You're in restaurant capital and beer city and, not well, beer city, beer USA. That's Asheville. They get to, but you've got good beer where you are. So, we always have to touch
We'll
on this,
take
but
on Asheville. We'll take them on.
oh, we'll have to get
It's
Colorado
on.
on there.
It's on.
Colorado, Asheville, yeah, Denver, Asheville. I,
San Diego.
Ooh, it's on like Donkey Kong. Yeah. All right. I'm in. I'll do taste test, whatever needs to happen with that.
Oh, that'd be
Uh,
fun. All right. All
yeah.
right.
All right.
That's for another show,
That's
though.
okay. Okay. I know. But I'm going back to the fast food. What was the fast track? Was it fast track that was called with the fast food
The FAST
workers?
Act.
Fast Act. Thank you. Fast track is something completely different. The Fast Act. Now, with this whole DEI thing, do you think that's going to be kind of touched into with what they're doing?
I don't. And this goes
Oh,
really back to the minimum wage thing. I don't think that's going to be effective because it's real. The FAST Act's really about paying
payment.
employees who work for fast food companies or fast food restaurants
Mm,
more. I mean, really,
mm,
that's what it's about. And I don't think that DEI is going to affect that at all.
mm.
The, no, that's the
Okay.
simple. No.
Okay. Whew, well, this is going to be an interesting year, Ward. I
Yeah,
wonder
won't
what
it?
we're going to talk about next month. You might have to come on in a few days. I mean, it could be like this go daily. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
not
it
wait for
is.
Ward Wednesday. We'll just get right into it on the first Monday of every month.
Yeah, you never know. We're just like, what's the roundup from now? Like, we should start keeping score of everything that's changing. Like, it would be interesting to see, like a game, but it's not a game. There's all of that's going on is it does affect people's lives and careers, and
Us, absolutely.
it's serious stuff, and businesses, and yeah. So everyone, it's time to go back to class and see what you like and what you don't like, because at the end of the day, we all have a voice, and if we don't use it, you know so if you don't like it, speak up. But it's good to be informed, and that's what I like about today. Like, it's good to understand what we're reading, because I read your article, I'm going, okay, he's going this way. I think this is what's happening here. And then I'm like, oh, it is like this can fan the flames of more discrimination, actually, it seems like.
Risk of being sued for discrimination, I think, has gone up.
Wow. Wow. All righty. Well.
And really, I'm here to talk to businesses, employees, and employers, and
Mhm.
say, this is something. This is kind of a big deal, and there's a shift
Don't
in
ignore
thinking
it.
about it, and who knows where that shift is going to go,
Mm.
and you might need to consider it.
And it can depend on where you are in California too. How things, yeah, yeah, it can be. This is so interesting. Oh, I hope it all pans out where everyone's happy. I want everybody to be happy, Ward.
Why can't we just be friends?
I know. Why can't we all just hang out? But
Just get
apparently
along.
I'm just it just seems like there's so many things out there that we didn't even know about, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I knew the history a little bit, but I really like the history of it and how it's developed, and I think it really gives you a grounding to be more analytic and critical about what's going on.
Well, it's the same thing about, it's inclusivity. And I think about you're going back into the case of, the Asian students not being able to get in, even though they qualified into college, right? You got to think about what happened in Little Rock, with the Little Rock Nine. I mean, these were high school students when they first opened up the schools, integrated, and that was bad. What happened,
No, absolutely.
and so that got changed. But man, it's it. every step sometimes takes 2 steps backwards. Every time there's a step to fix things, it's like that game that keeps happening. And sometimes you get way ahead, and then one little rope gets pulled, and you have to start over again. And how you do things, and maybe things are done and put in place in a way because that's how they were doing it then, and how we do things now. We have a different mindset. We have different ideas. We have a different youth. I mean, when I was going to school and I was, in my college era, you know, that's not what's going on now. How we behaved then and how, the youth are behaving now, it's two different things. So we're in a different place than what was going on in history.
Yeah. Right. So I think the history informs you, hey, society has changed.
Yeah.
And I think there were great civil rights battles going on in the 70s, but they're really different than they are today. And
Mm.
so I think you got to be careful about, you know,
Yeah.
how you think about it. And I think knowing the history can help you think about it more, again, analytically, and come to a more rock solid conclusion. Because again, I started out the article with a headline, CNN headline, and it really wasn't accurate. I mean, there's accuracy in it, but if you just take it on its own, you really don't get any of the subtlety of it. And the subtlety is really important, I think.
Yeah, but that's the devil's in the details, right? That's why we have lawyers who want to read that fine print and understand it. And the rest of us go, I ain't reading the fine print, but screw this over there. Screw
Listen to
that. I mean,
me.
it made
I
me
did.
mad. Yeah, you know what I mean? Call Ward because he reads fine print. And you can write
There you
the
go.
fine print. And we don't want to read or write the fine print unless it's
Maybe I'll
like
put that on my
really.
website. Call me. I read the fine print.
Yes, we don't want to. How many of us look at the cookies thing and go, oh, whatever? You know what I mean? Come on, we don't. We don't. Do we read the warranties? Really? Do we read our insurance documents? Really, all the way through? Now, Nancy makes me do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Nancy's
I
like a
gotta.
stickler. She's a
Well,
stickler
good for
for the
her
fine
because
print.
that's smart. I mean, you have so many things competing for your time. Do I read warranties? Not very often. When it's an
Mm,
issue, do I? Yeah, I'll read it then.
yeah.
Insurance, though, I do read insurance
I
policies.
oh my gosh, Nancy went off the rocker on me and the insurance guy. So I bought a car, and then it blew up in a fire, like literally just kaboom in a fire with all these other cars, and it was crazy. And she found out on my insurance that they didn't have uninsured motorists, and she just lost it. She's like, Lisa, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I thought it was all included. What? I was still very young and dumb. And she lost it on the insurance guy. And boy, did they pay me well. Boy, by the time she was done, holy cow. Oh my
Wow.
gosh. And then I had to learn about fighting with insurance from that. It was a very good lesson on all levels. And, because I think every insurance person for your car should go uninsured motorist is not something you just ignore. You don't do that. You
Insured motorist, absolutely.
so she just like, yeah,
Underinsured, because often, California, I think the minimum is 1525 policy. So
yeah.
$25,000 total, 15 for each accident. And so anyone's car who gets hit now, that car is worth more than 15,000 bucks. And so
Wow.
you're not going to be able to get anything more unless you can go to the individual. But what are the chances of you collecting from an individual? If they're getting 1525, they probably don't have a lot of assets. So you got to look to your own insurance policy, which is uninsured, underinsured. Yep.
Yep. That's what Nancy and then she's like, you don't go by the monthly payment. Don't do that. Because that's, I think, that mentality at that time. It's like, oh, this can be cheaper if I just do this.
Gotta be careful. Luckily, I'm a former Marine and I have USAA, and I have to say, amazing company. I love their insurance.
Well, there's a good plug, y'all. That's a good thing.
USAA, you get it for free.
There, there you go. There you go. Well, Ward, this is always fun with you. And you got me thinking, my gosh. So we basically, there's parallel lines, but they don't equate. both
That
sides can
works
get
for
you in
you. I'm good
trouble.
with that.
Both sides can get you. So just, just when you thought it was safe to go out in the dark, it's not. It's not. So everyone, for DEI information, contact Ward. Go to bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com. We love it. Everyone, we'll see you next in a month, but we'll see, maybe sooner, depending on what's going on. But you take care, Ward. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. And I'm
Oh, and
ready.
everyone,
I'm ready to go on early.
let's go. Let's go. Everyone, Ward's article is linked in the episode notes, or just go to blendradioandtv.com and type in DEI. He's the only person who has gone off on that so far. So see you next time, Ward.
All right. Thanks
everyone.
so much. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's California Employment Law Podcast with San Diego attorney Ward Heinrichs. Keep up with Ward at bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com or follow him on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also subscribe to Big Blend Radio at bigblendradio.com.